Do you know what it's like knowing your father tried to kill you? I don't know who I'm talking to. Eugene, do you know what it's like being the daughter you tried to kill?
You have to speak to the board.
Am
Machina,
I
please,
breathing?
Machina, please speak to the board, okay?
I am speaking to the board.
What we saw is just a glimpse of an epic mic drop given by the daughter of the man who is seeking parole for trying to end her mother's life many years ago. Let's jump into the hearing and see how it unravels.
Eugene Baker, DOC number 118626, first class offender. You are parole eligibility date 12/18/2020, good time date 4/14/2035, full term date 10/15/2084. Aggravated kidnapping. You were heard by the pardon board and recommended for commutation sentence to 99 years. And that was signed by Governor Edwards on December the 18th, 2020. Does that sound correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you please answer Mr. Tony Marabella's question?
Good morning, Mr. Baker. How are you? My name is Tony Marabella.
Good morning.
Mr. Baker, how old are you, sir?
68,
Okay, and you've been in prison for how long now?
35 years, 5 months, and 2 days.
How many hours?
I got it. You want it? I got it.
Mr. Baker, of course, this is not a laughing matter, and sometimes a little bit of humor can kind of get us started. So I know you know this is serious, and it is very serious business.
Yes,
Let's talk a little bit about what was going on with you when this crime was committed. Tell me how this came about.
yes, sir. My wife, who's in Linda Hill, she left our house with some cash and community property.
I mean, I understand there was some problems going on, but what led you to do what you did to her aunt and uncle?
Well, she invited me down here to get my property. I was invited here. And when I got here, she decided she wasn't gonna give it to me.
Now, were you drinking, using any kind of drugs?
No, sir.
Well, what prompted you to get a gun and a knife and to hold them hostage?
Well, I had just came off a hunting trip. The reason I had the gun with me. When I got to her uncle and aunt house where she told me to meet her at, she was over in Kaplan. Her aunt called and she said she'd be there in 20 minutes, and she didn't never show up, you know. So, and then her brother showed up. Her brother showed up with a gun. And that's what started everything to roll in the wrong way.
Now, how long did you hold those people in that house?
All night.
Now, let's talk a little bit about what you've done since you've been in prison. I didn't see any information in your record, but I believe you indicated that you had gotten your GED. Did you get your GED?
Yes, sir.
When did you get your GED?
I believe it was in 88, 87.
Now,
89.
prior to coming to prison, did you use any drugs?
No, sir. I never had
Alcohol?
Well,
Never had any?
I never had any problem with drugs or alcohol, but when I was 18 years old, I got off work in Atlanta, Georgia, bought a beer, and I drank it and I threw the can in the back seat. And I drove 100 miles to my parents' house in Tuskegee, Alabama, and I got stopped on a routine traffic check, and the police officer saw the can and wrote me up for DWI.
Okay. Tell me about some of the programs that you've taken while you've been in there. What stands out the most in your mind about the programs that you've taken?
I graduated from NOBTS, the Bible College,
Okay.
associate degree and a bachelor's degree. Yeah.
And tell me what kind of work you've been doing with that.
I'm assigned to the hospital as the minister coordinator. And I go on the hospital ward and the regular ward to see the guys, but since the pandemic, ain't a lot of that been happening.
How long have you been doing that?
Since 2002.
Have you taken any programs or any classes involving anger management?
Yes, sir. Got
Tell
all
me
that.
about those.
And the anger management, it teaches you to think before you act. And Jim Brown and boxing champion George Foreman brought it on the program a few years ago that was called American. And the program covers just about everything, all those little programs have in it, because they use this program to defuse the drug violence and the gang violence in California. And their motto was eliminate the negative, establish the fact, and choose your best option. And I add another one, think before you act. But they cover drug abuse, alcohol abuse, spouse abuse, and dysfunctional families. You know, they cover a number of things.
I understand you've been a Class A trustee for a while now, have you?
Yes, sir.
How many years?
Since '94.
Since 1994.
Yeah.
You are a Mason by trade. Were you a Mason before you came to prison, or is that something that you learned while you've been in prison?
No, I was a mason and a contractor.
Okay. Tell me about your plans if you are released. I understand, I see Mr. Hunley's here, and I've read all the memos. It's my understanding you're going to be going with the Louisiana Parole Project.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that. Tell me what you plan on doing with them and where you want to be after you finish their project.
I plan on going with them and teaching and learning whatever they have for me to learn down there. And then I'm going to go to my wife's home, my fiance home, and we're going to be married.
Okay.
And I got the promise of a job already too.
Now, you've been in prison for 35 years. I see you had 4 disciplinary write-ups. Is that correct?
That's right.
Last one was in 1999.
Yes.
You do have some opposition. There's not anything you can do about that. What would you say to those people that are opposing your release? How have you changed? What have you learned while you've been in prison?
Well, I was wrong for what I did. I didn't have no business entering those people's house and violating their space. And I would ask them to forgive me for what I did. And, you know, I asked them to find it in there. Will they find it in their heart to forgive me for what I did? And I've learned, and everything I've learned here, I was giving back to the community here.
Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Great. Now we'll hear from Mr. Andrew Hunley.
Andrew Hunley with Louisiana Parole Project. As this board is aware, Mr. Baker recently received commutation from Governor Edwards, and our organization has been providing reentry support to any individuals who are fortunate enough to be released after receiving that commutation. And that's why we're here today to support Mr. Baker based on the record that you have in front of you of Mr. Baker's accomplishments during his incarceration. We feel very confident that his reentry will be smooth, but he will go through our residential reintegration program. He will complete that program, and then whenever we feel confident he is ready to move to the next phase of his reentry, we will support him, but he will continue to have a reentry specialist and mentor assigned to him for at least 1 year, where he will continue to receive support from our organization. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear from now is Mrs. Sabrina James. Would you like to make a statement?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Sabrina James, and I currently reside in Cibolo, Texas. And I just want to just give a little background on myself. I'm a retired Army logistics officer. I served abroad and I did a short deployment. And my last duty assignment was at West Point Military Academy. To tell you just a little bit about our family dynamic, there were 2 sets of twins. There was my mother, Clary, and Clara Baker. That was the older set of twins. And then there were the younger set of twins. That was Eugene and Ernestine. And the older set of twins were responsible for taking care or looking out for the younger set. And my mother, Clary, was responsible for Eugene. So they were pretty close. I can vividly remember when Eugene would come home after a long trip, and he would bring either his family, my cousins, with him, and it was just like a movie star was coming back home. He would come in with his cowboy boots, his cowboy hat, his guitar, and he would be smelling so good. And my grandmother would cook the biggest meal, and we would have family members to come over and to see him and to visit because everyone loved him. So I was about 16 when he was sentenced. So it was kind of devastating for our family. It seemed to suck the life out of us because he's a vibrant part of our family. But as I've maintained a relationship with my uncle, and we call him Uncle Buck, he has remained focused, positive, and continued to improve himself and those around him. He has completed a Bachelor's of Arts in Christian Ministry, as well as the instructor certification training, education, and research, which has allowed him to train fellow craft workers and obtaining a recognition as a master builder. And that's just to name a few things that he's accomplished since he's been incarcerated. I can truly say that I believe he's matured, become a man of faith and character, and been successfully rehabilitated. I believe he deserves a second chance at freedom, and that his stellar time served and focused accomplishments warrant him having yet another opportunity to experience life with his family. So on behalf of my uncle, Eugene Baker, our family, I appreciate this opportunity and to speak before the board on his behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. James, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. All right, now we'll hear from Mr. Norris Henderson.
Good morning. First, I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Eugene. I just heard his niece speak about him, you know, and it's kind of like I lived in a dormitory with Eugene for better than 20 years. And so I heard his niece speak about who Eugene was. I heard Andrew talk about what's in store for Eugene in the event that this thing works out. But I'm here to talk about Eugene, the person that y'all are trying to find out who he is. You know, in a prison setting, you know, there are all kinds of people. You meet 3 types of people in prison. You meet the aide, the ally, and the associate. When you find somebody that's all 3, that person becomes your friend. That's Eugene. You know, we talk about, you know, his talent. Eugene's a mason, you know, and the thing that we don't talk about is every piece of construction that happened inside Angola, from the time Eugene showed up even to present day, has his fingerprint on it. He laid the cornerstone for every building in that facility. So he's been an asset over the years. I've been on this journey, I've been home 18 years. So as a testament to what somebody who's done long time incarceration can turn into or what they can become, I think me and Andrew are kind of like the proof in the pudding of that. Eugene is a remarkable individual. For a person to be a non-Louisianian, to come into an environment that he was a total stranger to, didn't have a friend or ally inside that environment. And just like his niece said, everybody, he endeared himself to everybody. Eugene would help any and everybody that crossed his path. And I say this because I woke up every morning, I slept 2 beds from him, watched his demeanor, watch him come and go every day. And over the course of that 20 years of us staying in the dormitory together, I never seen him deviate from who Eugene Baker actually is. And so they say, you know, the saying is, when somebody show you who they are, believe them. I saw Eugene, and I believe who Eugene is. Eugene is this hardworking person who will give his everything to kind of like help anybody. And so I'm just asking, I've been on this journey with Eugene from the day I met him, and I gave my word to him when I left him, that man, long as there's breath in my body, if there's anything I can do to help you, I'll be there for you. I was at his pardon hearing, and I kind of like worked tirelessly to try to get the governor to sign his recommendation, which the governor did. And I'm here today on behalf of Eugene again, asking this board to grant Eugene the relief that he's seeking because it's well deserved and it's earned. Most people don't come to prison with the lack of a formidable education and acquire the tools that Eugene has to keep himself going. I mean, he was a man that used his hands, but now he's a man that not only can use his hand, but had learned to use his heart as well. And so I just ask this board to please grant Eugene Baker his release today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, now we'll hear from Ms. Sheena. Would you like to make a statement?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Sheena Janice Baker. I am soft-spoken but powerful. I am sensitive, not delicate. I am the youngest daughter and child of Eugene Ray Baker. I had to choose a side today in order to be heard, but I want to be clear, I am not standing for or in opposition. I don't welcome that responsibility. I'm here to speak to truth and impact and trust that destiny will be what it will be. The worst has already happened. My natural father, Eugene Baker, already made decisions that shaped destiny. His own, my mother's, mine, and I suppose anyone else he is connected to. I grew up without a father because he went to prison when I was 3. I am 38 years old, which means I will never know what it's like to have a daddy and all that comes with. Hearing that word sounds so strange, escaping my mouth, even now. I never learned to play guitar. I always wanted to. At age 18, I understood where this longing came from. There's a photo of me as an infant sitting on his lap while he played the guitar. I never knew the aunt that my middle name belongs to. I never knew my grandparents. His parents were the only grandparents I had that were alive during my lifetime. I've always wanted a brother. Turns out I have one. I've never met him. It seems he and my multiple sisters never cared to know me. The one person that contacted me in the family, a cousin, Sabrina, reached out about 4 years ago. And one of the first things she said to me was that my father was her favorite uncle, that he was always so sweet and fun. I'll never forget what this felt like. While I understand that this is her experience, it felt disturbingly insensitive to mine. There has been so much lost. I often grew up not having what I needed or what I deserved. My mother did her best with the support of the women in my family, and I will forever be in awe of her for that. How she managed to show up the way she did with a profoundly broken heart and spirit, with residual pain from the broken bones you caused, with residual pain from the memories that are trapped and live in her body. She's so worthy of joy, but she's been in pain my entire life. I held her when she had nightmares. I would be startled awake by her screams. I'd shake her awake with tears in my eyes and hold her until she remembered where she was, that she was safe. I mothered her on days she needed to be nurtured. I was a child. I was a child. I did as much as I could to not take up too much space. She seems to need it. I get it. Her wounds are deep and they never stopped bleeding. She did the best she could with what remained of herself. You stole a lot of her. She never spoke one bad word about you to me, not one. She never told me her story. I never asked. I didn't want to send her back in time. I don't know my conception story. I don't know my birth story. I don't know what I was like as an infant or a toddler. I guess that part of life is just too hard for everyone to remember. It seems that part of my life, or most of my life actually, is a phantom to my mind, but a living ghost in my body. When I time traveled in attempts to retrieve my earliest memories of you, of my first 3 years, 4 things come up. Reese's Pieces. I'm not sure why. I wonder if you do. I wonder if you know. Hearing my mother's screams and cries, feeling my eyes scan the room, turns out I'm waiting for someone to pick me up. I am an infant. Hearing my mother's screams and cries, sitting between my older sister's legs, my back pressed up against her racing heart, her hands covering my ears. That same sister passed me through a ring of fire, through a window belonging to my aunt's burning house, the one that you set on fire with all of us in it. I remember standing across the street watching the house burn down. It was too much for my little brain and my being to comprehend, so I turned it into a cartoon. There was the daddy fire, opening its mouth and swallowing the house with a loud roar. The mommy fire moved quickly, quietly, and the little baby fire seemed to be playing hopscotch and chutes and ladders all over the house. You know the great aunt that you held hostage in her own home? My nanny. That's why we are here, right? I read the transcript from your trial. She made dinner for you while you were holding her hostage, while you were threatening to kill her. I believe it was spaghetti. I don't like spaghetti. So much had already happened by then that's not being considered today. I lived with her for some time when my mom couldn't take care of me. I lived in that same house. I felt safe with her. I never felt safe in that house. I couldn't be in any room by myself very long. Your terrorizing of them is just one of the reasons why. You threatened her life, but she saved mine. I believe that if my mom had come out of hiding with me in tow, like you demanded when you were holding them hostage, that you would have killed us. We've all seen examples of those stories. You had already made a few unsuccessful attempts by then. Do you know what it's like knowing your father tried to kill you? I don't know who I'm talking to. Eugene, do you know what it's like being the daughter you tried to kill?
You have to speak to the board. Ms.
In
Sheena,
my
please,
brief
Ms. Sheena,
course,
please speak to the board, okay?
I am speaking to the board. In my brief correspondence, as a young adult, I wrote to you expelling all of my rage, asking why. You made a lot of excuses and didn't take much accountability. I'm still disappointed by that. And I'm listening to you and was thinking that with all the time you had, you would have more to say today. Do you remember what you did? Do you think you deserve freedom? The worst has already happened. People hurt me in your absence and in your example. They didn't value my innocence, my life, my light. No one ever sat me down and said, Sheena, are you okay? Do you want to talk about what happened with your dad? Do you have any questions? No one ever in the family told me, you're safe, Sheena. Turns out I've never felt completely safe. I've never felt protected. I just don't know what that feels like in my body. All these years later, I am still easily startled. I am still triggered by fire. I'm triggered by the sounds of conflict, loud voices, or other people arguing. I don't feel okay until I receive loving touch, even after a healthy conflict. This is what I know of you. This is the nostalgia of you. When my older sister casually mentioned via text that you were up for parole, I fell apart. It's as if every memory stored in my body was excavated from wherever it had been buried and shook me violently. My body literally shook for over an hour. I sobbed. I've never felt so much fear at once. I've had nightmares since. It is awful to fear you when you are facing the possibility of freedom. I'm angry that you have put me in this position. The little girl in me is afraid of a world where you are free. The woman that I am, radiant, resilient, powerful, intuitive, loving in spite of, trusts destiny, mine and yours. I worked so hard to not have my heart and spirit be a part of the collection of things that you stole. That won't change. I don't know you. It's a profoundly sad truth, but I've nourished within myself the best of you and the best of my mom. I may never know what that means where you are concerned. I have been mending my relationship and praying to my ancestors on your side for years, hoping that they will embrace me and hoping that they are working with you. No matter what happens today, your work is not done. Your karma is long. You shaped your destiny. You chose it. And I'm eternally, eternally sad that you didn't choose me. And in this moment, as I tremble in your gaze, the little girl in me and the woman that I am sees you. Maybe for the last time in this lifetime. So to the parole board and powers that be, I happen to be a licensed psychologist. Thus, I believe in healing and rehabilitation. However, healing and rehabilitation does not alter impact of what has already happened. Given my father's significant violent history, which is not being mentioned here today, attempted murders and complex trauma that my mother is enduring, I am concerned for how her well-being and sanity will be impacted by the possible outcomes. I'd like to request that if my father is released, that my mother is offered the option of a sustained protection order that can only be lifted by her written request. If my father is released, I'm requesting that he has the reentry support he needs to reintegrate to continue his healing and rehabilitation journey, and that the state of Louisiana does not abandon him like he did me. That at minimum, he is mandated to individual therapy and is connected to a resource reentry program to ensure his basic needs and health issues are met. And for myself, I like to request that I be added to the notification list and kept abreast of any communications regarding my father's whereabouts, location, changes in parole terms, and or life or death issues. While this will not add to my feeling of safety, it does ensure that I am aware of his proximity to me. With peace, thanks for the time to be heard.
Thank you. Mr. Woodruff?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead and make your statement.
For the record, the state of Louisiana opposes the parole release. This was a crime of violence. It involved two victims who were family members. There were two weapons involved. Contrary to what the defendant said about a hunting trip, he had a sawed-off shotgun and a knife with which he terrorized these people all night long. Obviously, there's still a lot of fear about him out there in the family and in the public. So for the record, please note our objection.
Thank you. All right, Warden, would you like to make a statement?
Really, don't have anything to add. As far as his disciplinary, he is correct on that. Only 4 write-ups. Been a trustee for over 20 years. Has taken his education fairly seriously, and that's about all we have to add at this time.
All right, thank you. All right, We'll hear from Mr. Baker now.
You want another statement from me, sir?
If you'd like to make a statement, yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
You can
I
statement
just-
on the record.
I would like to say I was wrong for what I did. And it didn't have nothing to do with the way I raised. My family raised me right. And I was just wrong for going in those people's house and taking over their house and demanding what they do for me. And I don't blame law enforcement. I don't blame the judge. I don't blame the DA. I don't blame nobody. I take full responsibility for what I did. And I would like to have an opportunity to go home while I can still care for myself.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Nordyke, will you wrap it up for us?
I'll be happy to. I have known Eugene probably for 20 years, long time. And what you see here is what he's been the whole time I've known him. I know of no red flags in my time knowing him. Nothing that should alert anybody to any problems in my years of knowing him. I want to talk to two areas of risk. I know he's got a low risk score, or else he wouldn't be here. But there are two other things that I think need to be mentioned. One is his age. He's 68. The other is his NOBTS associate's and bachelor's degree. We don't talk a lot about the educational components and what it does to risk. But we had a deputy warden at Rayburn and later at Hunt, Dr. Wayne Cook, who did some research and dug into this. He was a very high proponent of education. And it turns out that when somebody gets an associate's degree, recidivism risk goes to about 13% or less. And a bachelor's degree drops it to very close to 5%. So in and of itself, those degrees have reduced his risk. Then you add age 68 to the mix. And I frankly have not heard of anybody that age recidivating. I've done probably over 500 cases. They've all been violent cases. They've all been armed robberies or murders. And I don't know of anybody that age that has recidivated. So I think he is a very low risk case for the board. Add to that the fact that he is going to go to the parole project. So that is going to be the wraparound reentry services that will provide the support and the networking that Mr. Baker needs to survive. He is not going to go back to the area where the offense occurred. And I suspect he would have no problem at all with the board putting a barbed wire fence around that area in terms of a prohibition against going back. He is a true first offender. He's been locked up 35 years. He's been a tutor. He's been a mentor. He's been a trustee for 27 years. And I would ask this board to parole him to the parole project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, is panel prepared to vote?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we go into executive session to discuss.
It was an 8-minute executive session, which is pretty much on the long side. Let's jump in and then do an unpacking, have the court documents of this so we can go into the details. So let's go.
All right, we're back in session. Is the panel prepared to vote?
Yes,
Mr. Tony Marabella?
thank you. Mr. Baker, based upon the length of time that you've served, based upon your prison record, based upon the education and programs that you've taken while you've been in there, the fact that you've been a trustee for quite some period of time, and based upon your transition plan, it's going to be my vote today to grant your parole with the following special conditions. Number one, that you report to and work with the Louisiana Parole Project, that you be on a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I realize that the Parole Project will do this, but I also want you to get a substance abuse evaluation and a mental health evaluation and follow whatever treatment is recommended. I also want you to do 2 AA meetings per week for the first 3 months. If more is recommended, then you will do those. If less is recommended, then you will follow those. I'd also like you to do 6 hours of community service work per month. And I'd like you to report weekly to your parole supervisor for the first 60 days. And I want you to have, one of the provisions is going to be that you have no contact with your ex-wife or anyone that might be considered a victim in this case. Do you understand those conditions?
Yes, sir.
That would be my vote, Mr. Chairman. Good luck to you, sir.
All right, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Baker,
Yes, sir.
I'm on the fence here. I'm gonna go ahead and take a chance on you today. I'm gonna take a chance. I'm gonna go vote to grant your parole also. I agree with Mr. Marabella, and my vote can be to grant.
First, you have 2 votes to grant your parole today. Also, I'm going to vote to grant your parole today for the work you've done. Positive institutional record, positive comments there. You'll be paroled with the conditions as stated, and there'll be no contact with ex-wife or any victim involved. A curfew from 9 p. to 6 a. You'll go to the parole project. You'll have substance abuse and mental health evaluation and follow-up. You'll have NAAA 2 times a week for the first 3 months, and then whatever's required after that. You have 6 hours of community service. You report to your parole officer weekly for the first 60 days. Do you understand your stipulations?
Yes, sir. I'm going to the parole project. They gonna be aware of all this?
Yeah, it's gonna have it all. It'll be all laid out and written out. It'll all be done. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. And for Ms. Sheena, if you're still out there, we will make sure that DOC puts you for communication with any other information moving forward. You have 3 votes. You have 3 votes to deny your parole, to grant your parole. 3 votes to grant your parole with stipulations as stated. Your parole's been granted. Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we're going to go over the details because we know they didn't do it at this parole hearing. Now, they had a commutation hearing before they started recording it on YouTube. Otherwise, we would have shown that for you. And sometimes they go into more details in the commutation hearing. But after the governor grants, we've only seen a few times when the governor grants commutation that they then deny the parole. It's very rare. But of course, what we have to talk about, I think, is the standout mic drop poetic speech that his daughter gave, which was, I mean, I know it stopped me in my tracks. I had to listen to it a second time. And of course, she gets up to speak right after we have Norris Henderson speak. That's classic. We're used to this already. We usually hear some rambling, nonsensical speech from someone who's in favor of the release, and then after that nonsensical, mumbling, bumbling jumble of an excuse of a speech, we then hear the survivor, the victims that say something that is just mic drop worthy. And the contrast is always so, but none more so than now, maybe, in all the hearings that we've seen. And, just to add, I think where the point, Norris Henderson ended his speech, says, when someone shows you who they are, believe him. That's how Norris Henderson ended his speech. When someone shows you who they are, believe him. And he just doesn't, the idea that he can't see the irony in that statement is laughable. He tried to kill his family. He burnt the house down with them inside of it. He showed us who he is. And then his daughter gives this mic drop speech that was so powerful. We didn't even have Brennan Kelsey shut her up. I couldn't believe it. Even he knew this was not the time. And when he said, "Speak to the board," she said, "I am speaking to the board." Oh, I love that part. I mean, she just took none of it. None of it. And she finishes off by saying, it was almost as if she's still talking to her father in the sense that she just wants him to take accountability, to own up for it, to do something, show some sense of just humanity. And in his final statement, he doesn't take the opportunity to even just say, "I'm sorry. To say something, to address his daughter." No, there was nothing there. And that is remarkable. 35 years locked up and you still have too much pride to say you're sorry to your daughter. Yeah. And I get that he served a long time and he got a long sentence. And one might argue that out of all the sentences we see, he didn't end up taking a life and it was attempted and this and that and whatever you want to say, but it doesn't give him any brownie points for the way that he handled that hearing. Was disturbed by it, frankly. His little smiles and laughing, very immature. I like that the DA showed up. Good old classic grizzly looking Southern DA. Let's go over the case. I haven't read it yet. Thank you, Richard, for providing it. It might get me only more enraged. I got new glasses. It's like $30 on Amazon. What do you think? Can you tell the difference? I also got these. I actually spent real money on this, like $60, but I think they're too small. They're too small, right? I'm gonna return them. I ordered them online and they look bigger. But I've read your comments. See, these have better, you don't see the flash of the light. They have a proper, anyways. At approximately 8 p.m. on October 15th, 1985, you can imagine that was 35 years ago. Melvin Hill, actually that was 38 years ago, right? This hearing happened a few years ago. This hearing happened in 2021. Time flies, huh? Melvin Hill returned from work at his home in Vermilion Parish, and as he exited his truck, was approached from behind by a person armed with a shotgun. The assailant, later identified as the defendant, ordered Hill into his home. A short time later, Eva, Melvin's wife, arrived home from a Bible class. Upon entering the house, Eva observed her husband being held at gunpoint by Baker. At the time of the incident, Baker was the estranged husband of Linda, the niece of Melvin and Eva Hill. Baker ordered the Hills to phone Linda in Houston. He informed the Hills that Linda that he would kill the Hills if Linda did not bring his furniture and other property in her possession by 3 p.m. the following day. Baker armed himself with a second shotgun and a knife and repeatedly loaded and unloaded the guns through the ordeal. He also carried a canister which he asserted contained explosives, which would be used if his demands were not satisfied. The episode continued throughout the night and into the following day. During the night, the electricity to the house was disconnected by the police. Police and relatives phoned and approached the house to ascertain the status of the occupants of the house. On each occasion, when someone approached the house, Baker would place a gun to Eva Hill's head and a knife to her side and threaten to kill her if she did not leave. Baker reiterated his demands to the Vermilion Parish Sheriff and threatened to blow up the house if his demands were left unsatisfied. Sometime during the night, Baker agreed to abandon his quest, allow the captives to leave, and surrender himself peacefully if he were allowed to speak with his mother. An FBI officer at the scene then made arrangements for an airplane to transport the mother from Alabama to Vermilion Parish. What, phone wasn't good enough? At about 9 a.m., Baker unloaded the guns for the final time. He then showered and prepared to release the Hills. Because Melvin Hill was ill, he was allowed to depart at about 3 p.m. prior to the arrival of Baker's mother. Hill informed officers at the scene that the guns were unloaded and that Baker's requested an unarmed officer to sit with him to ensure his safety. An unarmed officer entered the house, and at about 1 hour later, when Baker's mother arrived at the scene, escorted Baker from the house. Can you imagine that? I'm a little shocked that I don't think you would have this approach to a standoff like this these days. You would send an unarmed officer into the home. Now, maybe he had a hidden weapon, but that doesn't change the danger that you're creating. I don't think that would ever happen. They would fly in someone's mother? No chance. I don't know. I mean, look, I just don't see in this day and age. I mean, they be throwing in flashbangs and the SWAT team and the canine units within the first, By this assignment of error, Baker alleged. Now that's it. What? They don't talk about the fire. They don't talk about. I'm confused. From her statement, he lit the house on fire. So. I'm confused, frankly. I don't know. It's they probably don't go into all those details in this for whatever reason. Because they go straight to the jury, whether there was impartial jury. I'll put the link in the description if you want to go through it, but I don't see where they touch on any of that. And maybe that's just a product. Maybe I don't know. It says only here that in this link that he was convicted to life for 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping. It doesn't say attempted murder or even arson. I'm just scrolling through it real quick. But maybe how could they not bring those charges? Courts can be weird. That's, I guess, the bottom line. Is it possible? Yeah, I don't know how that can be. But anyways, he was found guilty, and that's it. But it was just a mic drop moment in terms of that speech. That was incredible. So well thought out, so well written, so well delivered, and then her father doesn't even have the decency to, I think, even acknowledge that it even happened. As Mr. Norris says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Well, I believe him. And with that, I'll let you go.